久しぶりに飛んでおります。気持ちいいです。
Hello Seawolves and welcome back to the show. Another 24 hours have passed in the VendeeGlobe around the world sailing / foiling race, and I picked that video for a reason, because today we're going to do something a little bit special. I really like when you guys send in questions, and I also know that many of you like it when I really dive into some of the more specific subjects. And yesterday we talked a little bit about sort of sail handling and the time it takes to do certain maneuvers. And a few of you voiced your surprise at me when I said that, an average tack or jibe can take well over 20 minutes, sometimes as much as half an hour to 40 minutes to tack the boat. And many of you were kind of surprised, I guess, what? It takes half an hour to tack the boat? Yes, sometimes even longer. And so I think that actually, besides of course talking about what's happening in the race, we're definitely going to do that. Today we're going to spend some time, I'm going to actually help you guys to understand why it takes so long and kind of what it really takes to tack or jibe an Imoca like that. Because it's not so easy. There's a lot of things that need to be done, and I think actually it's a really cool way to again deepen your understanding of the race, and especially on the tacking and jibing part, because those two maneuvers, it's essentially turning the boat right in the wind or downwind, but those two maneuvers are two things that really make the race hard. Like doing that solo on an Imoca is really super hard. And I think it will be very interesting for many of you, if you don't know or if you don't know the exact process, to kind of wrap your head around how hard it actually is actually really quite interesting. And maybe you'll discover a lot of things about these boats and kind of how it works and what it takes that you didn't know yet. So I think it's a nice opportunity to learn a little bit more. So we'll just dive into that in a moment here. First, of course, a few things that happened today. Wait a minute. Almost forgot something. Let's do a toast first, of course. Sometimes I just, I run away with my own enthusiasm. I hope you guys are ready. I got some afternoon coffee in here, delicious. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Cheers, Wolves. So, quick overview. Of course, you guys all heard about the new speed record, again by Sébastien Simon, extending it now to a whopping 614.25 miles. So that's a bit over 1,032 kilometers now. Wow. I think that's probably the last time that it will be improved, at least in this part of the race. But wow, Sébastien is really booking, and he has, with all the speed records, also almost caught up to Charlie Dalin. So you can see here on the map, they are really very close to each other now. Yom in 4th place, a bit more south, so actually still in a good position, but in 4th now. Thomas Ruyant in 3rd, so Sébastien Simon actually passing Thomas Ruyant, no small feat. Charlie Dalin still in the lead, but Simon keeps closing in, so actually quite an interesting development. Now we'll check out the rest of the field and things that are happening a bit later. There was one thing from yesterday. So we talked yesterday about the fact that Pip had a problem with one of her winches, and she was cool enough to actually send me a video with the repair that she made, very specific technical stuff. I thought you guys would love to see that also. So here's what Pip actually did to make the repair on her winch.
So the problem is this wedge here, which is supposed to stop the ropes from continuing around the drum. This is worn away, so the ropes are getting underneath it. So what I need to do is build it up. I'm going to use plastic lid off a Tupperware. Cut it with an angle grinder, shape it, and stick some layers on and see if that works. All really easy at 25 knots. So I've basically made, so hard to see, a couple of wedges to stick on the bottom of there, just to fatten this piece up, in the hope the ropes won't get underneath it. Let's have a look.
Cool, huh? And you have to imagine, like these are very expensive, like top of the line, like carbon, space technology winches. And can you imagine that you're like just sailed halfway across the world? There's so many things that go wrong, and then at some point you find yourself booking along at 22 plus knots, very nearly into the Southern Ocean, thousands of kilometers literally away from the nearest land, and you have this big carbon winch in your hand, and you're there literally with the plastic Tupperware boxes singeing plastic onto your winch in order to fix this problem. I mean, like, that is the VendeeGlobe. It's like, it's a sailing race, but it's also like an episode of MacGyver sometimes a little bit. If you, for the people that are my age, if you remember MacGyver, sort of like an episode of that. And I think that particular human part of like just problem solving to the nth degree with just whatever creative thing you can figure out. The Russians have a nice saying, like, it's put together with shit and sticks. And yeah, by the end of the VendeeGlobe, let's just say that there are a lot of boats that have some parts that are thrown together with those two materials to make them work to the end of the race. And I personally think that that's just a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful aspect of the race. Just, solving problems however you can. That's life, right? So, we'll get back to the details of the race in the technical analysis in the end. Now, let's talk about tacking and jibing. So, I actually prepared this a little bit because I have some great images I can actually share to kind of make the point. And the first thing, so there are a few videos of like the boat jibing. Conrad made a nice video, but this is always in extremely light winds. You mostly never see videos of these type of boats, whether it's the Volvo 60 or the Imocas, actually tacking or jibing in strong winds. Because that's a maneuver that is just so violent, I'm talking from personal experience here, that it's something that is almost never filmed because everybody is just super busy, and it's like, especially in races, it's just like, one of the big maneuvers that takes a lot of time and effort and coordination. So it's never really a moment to film it. But during the Volvo, lucky enough, when we were almost home and we were not racing anymore, we got into a big storm, and I was actually able to film two full tack, so you can actually see the Volvo 60, but it's the same size as the Imoca basically, and the process is very much the same, in a full tack. So you can kind of really see the violence of that particular maneuver. And that's with 9 people on board. So this is 9 people working hard. And then you have to imagine one person, doing all of this. And I can kind of talk you to the process, right? So let's take a quick look at that so you can kind of see it first, and then we'll run through it a few times and I'll kind of explain to you what's happening, and I'll also make the translation to the Imocas, because there are some things that the Volvo doesn't have, like foils, and there are different aspects that are of course different. So there are many aspects to talk about here, and once you understand all the different parts that go into this, yeah, it's quite confronting. So let's start. Here we go. So welcome on board, and I'm just going to keep talking over this. So we're cruising right now at about something like 20 knots, probably maybe 18, 19 knots, something like that. You can see it's pretty violent, and so everybody's getting on board because the wind has increased like a lot and we're getting close to kind of a barrier, so we need to tack. So not only are we tacking, but it's also sort of a lot of people were like down below. That's why you can see that some people are actually not even like dressed in their suits and stuff, because they literally just ran up. The wind suddenly increased a lot. So that's kind of the sketch of the situation. And we're very quickly to preparing to make a tack here. I happen to have in this moment the camera with me, so I just kind of hang back, let everybody else do the work, and actually film this, because we were no longer racing, so it was good to do. So here we go. So everybody getting ready. And so something to watch for, I'll explain later, but once we actually flip over, you can see how disbalanced the boat is. So how much more we're going to be leaning over to the other side once the tack is made than we're leaning over now. You can see the seas are pretty big. So we're like flying over the waves here. Still preparing, everybody taking their positions. Okay, so here we go. So I gotta, flip my position here also, because it's much more heeled over than you may think. Look at how far all of a sudden we're heeling over, right? Pumping on the winches. Now you can see that the boat's slowly riding a bit more, huh? So you can notice it. But it's straightening out a little bit more again. I'll explain why in a second here again. And kind of there we go, right? And so now the rest is just like sort of tuning the boat. Yeah. And so, so what is happening here? Well, on this particular boat, so on the Volvo 60, it doesn't have foils, but it does have the canting keel, right? The big keel I talked about before. And it also has water ballast, and usually in a racing situation you also have the sailbags that they use for extra sort of riding momentum weight on the sides. So if this was a racing situation, you'd see like stacks of kind of bags of sails either on this side or here on the side, on the other side, sometimes stacked like all the way to the back in order to disperse the weight. But that's kind of not happening here. So to kind of, you can see the violence of it, right? And you can see that we're not working with a very big sail, so we have a jib, so that fits through the fore triangle, right? So we're actually just straight tacking it, we're not furling it in or anything like that. And of course you see the main sort of just swinging around. So in that sense it's a pretty regular tack. Now the tacking moment itself seems pretty quick, right? It's like it's just tacking right over. But don't forget about the fact that we have here 9 people, well 9 minus me, so 8 people at this point, all working together, managing the winch, managing ropes, doing all this stuff together. Of course, when you're on your own, it's a lot more involved. And I mean, check the moment when we're kind of turning, like see how many people, like if you focus on each particular person like instead, you can see that they're all very much doing things and doing multiple things, right? Like one person on the wheel, you can see Jelmer here on the front moving from one to, so there's just a lot of stuff going on. So let's run through for a second what needs to happen, and I'll take this, but I'll also translate it to the Imoca. So when an Imoca is kind of cruising at full speed in a strong sea like this, it can only do that when the whole system, all of the boat together, is tuned well, right? So all the weights and all the angles and the foils and everything kind of is in balance how it was designed. So there's a lot of forces kind of countering each other, right? And so if the boat is heeling over, let's say we're kind of on the starboard tack, then that means that literally all of the ballast is balanced on the opposite side of the boat. So if we take this particular angle here where we're kind of starting, so you can kind of see, if we were to make this into an Imoca, so let's say that we got a big wing sticking out here, and we got a big foil here in the water, right? What is going on? Well, that means that this foil here, let me pick a different color. So this foil here is going to be retracted. So it's in the short version, it's out of the water, you know, it's out of the way. While this foil here is right now extended, right? So it's extended into the water, so it's leaning on that. Now, for most of the Imocas, they don't carry ballast usually on the front if they're in strong weather, because the boats are very hydrodynamic and they get a lot of water overboard. So they're only really carrying weight on the back of the boat, so it's kind of on the transom, so you can't see that here. But you saw it in the video with Memento Mori here in the back. So they got these big bags here, kind of behind us in the picture, stacked on the high side. There will be like 1 or 2 sails to keep the back kind of, you know, flat. Then underneath the boat, let me get rid of this here. Underneath the boat, there is the keel, right? So in this particular case, if we look at kind of where the keel is going to be fully extended this way. So it's going to be very much like all the way there, because that creates a lot of weight, you know, downwards on this side. Then that also helps the boat to kind of stay up, right? Then there is, I'll do it in blue, there's also a lot of water ballast. So in a particular Volvo, there's like a big reservoir that takes like sort of half the side here, many liters of water. So that's full of water, right? So all that's happening, and then on the inside, there's also sail bags, there's like our bags, the weights, the suits, all this other stuff. All of that on the inside, that weight, is also, you know, stacked kind of on the high side, inside of the boat on this side. So you can already start to imagine, in the moment that you have to imagine this, you're on your own, on an Imoca, those things are true also. So here we have 8 guys to manage all of that stuff, but now you're just on your own. And that's hundreds of kilos of sails. Each one of those sails, they have like 6 usually on board that they're not using. So when they're using 2, they have 5 or 6 downstairs. Each one of those weighs, you know, 50, 60, something like that kilos, sometimes even more, right? So that's hundreds of kilos right there. Then there's hundreds of liters of water ballast, and there's all the other systems. So that's sort of the status quo when you're sailing on one tack, when you're just going fast, everything is in balance, right? So now you have to start preparing for the tack. And as you can see, when we tacked the boat here, you see that when we get to the other side, the boat is clearly disbalanced because we're heeling over sort of way too much to the other side for a bit. And then you see that things are getting corrected as we're starting to shift weight and the keel and all the other stuff. But in an Imoca, where you're doing it on your own, this is kind of a dangerous moment, because if the boat gets too disbalanced to this part, and that is actually possible on an Imoca, if you have too much weight on one side and you're actually turning to that side, then you actually can potentially capsize the boat. So before you can do that, as a solo sailor, you have to kind of prepare. And so that's the first part that takes some time. Now this is different for every Imoca, so every boat is internally a little bit different, the structure is a little bit different, the weight, the water tanks, where everything is located is a little bit different. So what I'm about to say is an example, and it can very much possibly be that some other boat does things in a different order, let's say. So don't go in the comment warriors like, oh no, it's always the water ballast. Like, the order can differ, and this is something that captains are also competing for, because this is really part of the match, like how fast you tack, how fast you jibe, and kind of all the nifty little tricks that you use to move your weight quickly and all this type of stuff is very key to winning a race like this, because in tacks and jibes, that's where you can win a lot of time if you can do it fast, because it's a long, difficult, very tough, tiring process. So say that we're sailing here on our own, and we have an Imoca with all these things. So foils extended, water ballast on one side, all of the internal weight on one side, keel extended to the opposite side, etc. Now, if I decide that I want to make a tack, depending on the boat, there will be several things that you kind of need to do, right? So first thing is you're probably going to like start to prepare your lines for, for winching the sails and all the other stuff to that side. So that's like a first preparatory cycle. You have like your chutes and all the other things for, in this case, the jib chute. So I gotta take that chute, put it on a winch here somewhere, make sure it's connected, make sure it's secure, maybe pre-tighten it a little bit so that everything is like ready to go. And same for the mainsail, so that's over on one side, that's a little bit less involved, but I gotta make sure that maybe my blocks or all the Imocas have kind of different systems for that. But you gotta make sure that all your blocks are ready and all the other stuff. Then Imocas also have wing masts, so the wing itself can twist a little bit to create more of a shape. And you can't really do that to the wrong side because then it gets pressures that it doesn't like. So in many cases they will sort of have the wing mast sort of pointing straight into the wind to be optimally hydrodynamic. But before attack you're gonna sort of straighten it because it's about to take this force flip and you want that mast to be kind of at maximum strength to take that. Then there are the two backstays. So these boats have two backstays and only the high one is tensioned. So if you imagine right now in this picture there's a stay that goes on the top of the boat all the way here to this particular side, right, behind us. And that's taking all of the load from the mast kind of pushing forward. The other stay on the back is sort of hanging loose, there's no tension on it, right? But that's going to be tensioned and it's a little looser to give the other one space. So you got to tighten that again as we tack. That's what one of the guys here is doing. So if you're going to be doing that single, then you got to pre-tighten that a little bit and make sure that you're ready to release the other one because you don't want the one that's taking the load now as you switch sides to keep taking the load because that'll put your mainsail at an odd angle which is like likely to damage it or the forces on then the other stay can't take the forces. So again, this depends on timing, it depends on the design of the boat, what you should do first and in which order, but it's always something that needs to be done. During the tag you need to change the backstay tension as well. So that's kind of just preparing the sail. So you can imagine that takes a little time, sorting everything out. Then you have certain types of ballast on one side that you're going to want to change. So for example, again, this doesn't necessarily have to be the order always, but the water ballast, so you have like your bags and all the other things on one side, right? So the water ballast is something that you can easily like pull the plug, let some of the water out so you can start to take some weight off of that particular side and let for example half your water tank empty to remove some weight. Then there's the question of your bags that you got stacked on the back. Now you can ask yourself, what's easier? Sliding bags down to their new position or lifting them up to your new position? Of course, sliding them down is a lot less effort, right? So if you can, and especially the Imocas have the bags on the back and also some weight inside. So do you want to first tack so that you then have to like drag all of the weight up? Or do you want to already move several things because you can just sort of easily slide them down and stack them on the right side and just leave just enough weight to counterbalance things in your new situation so that you don't have to like lift it all up because that's going to save you time, a lot of effort later, right? So that's another thing. Some boats will do it another way, some boats will do it in their way. So again, there's not one particular way. This is something where every captain can sort of be creative, experiment and do things in a way that they think is faster or works best, and they're constantly thinking about ways to do that better, faster, more efficiently. But so you're moving some internal weight. In here, in the Volvo, this is what the internal crew do. So there's always 3 or 4, like you can see 5, 6 guys on top. So that means there's 3, 4 people inside. You can actually see also one of them actually just standing here at the window. They are moving the stuff inside. So there's also sail bags, weight inside. So as we're preparing for the tack here outside, they're already grabbing bags and moving them to the other side on the inside, right? So here it's all happening at once, but an Imoca captain has to do those things kind of in the most efficient order. Then you're in a situation where you lost some of your water ballast, maybe you've moved some of your other ballast, you've prepared your sail, you've prepared your line. Now, what do we do about the foils? Because you got one foil fully extended here, but your other foil here is not extended. It's not ready, right? Now again, this is something that may be different for every boat. So some boats might extend it a little bit, others may not. That depends, I guess, on the design and how the designers think that is the best way to keep the foil safe, because it is kind of sort of smacking into the water when you make a tack or a jibe. So that'll be different for each boat. But you can imagine that you've had your foil in, you're going to go out. So they have some system in here to put a line towards the foil and to, with the winch, extend that foil because they know they're about to use it. So they're extending the foil, getting it ready, maybe copying the extension and the rake from the other foil that's in the water right now, because that's probably a good approximation of what you're going to want on the opposite side if you're on that tack. So that takes a little time, that takes a little work to prepare that, make sure everything is stocked and ready to be used on that side, because that's going to be taking all of the loads and all that's going to become like an active part in a second here when you tack. So then you have more or less all of the pre-work done, right? Okay, so now that the pre-work is done, then you can do the actual tack. So now you're going to do whatever you need to do, tell your autopilot, we're going to switch to this new course or whatever, get ready. And as a solo skipper, grab whatever winch you've set your head sail on, so your front jib in this case, or the backstay. It might also sometimes be that the backstay is more important to tension that first and to just leave the head sail, maybe in that case, loose, flapping a little bit, or still stuck on the other side, and then front flip it and attach it. It depends again on the design of the boat and kind of what the order is that the designer and your team have decided. Like that's what we think is the most efficient way to do it. Then you flip the front sail, you tension that, make sure that your head sail is good, everything is tensioned there. If there are like stabilizers or extra things that you have to place, all that sort of stuff needs to happen. Now you're tacked, now you're on the other side, but you still haven't, so now you have to like cant your keel, so that's one of the easiest things to do. And you were using that to still keep the boat balanced on the other side. But now you gotta sort of in the new situation, so if I head here, now we got the new angle, so I can kind of delete all this stuff. But your keel is maybe still on the wrong side, so now you're gonna swing your keel so that it comes to the right side again, right? So it's probably gonna be like this way. So now you're going to switch it to the other side. The backstay here should be in good order. You have your weight here again. You have to like jump inside to move whatever remaining inside stuff you have. And you're letting the last water out of the water tanks here. And you're filling the water tanks here on this side of your boat again. And so only once all of that stuff is done, then your tack is complete. Then you're again optimally sailing on the other tack, right? So I hope that gives you guys a bit more of an overview of like, okay, wow, there's actually many more steps to it, especially if you're doing it solo, than just, readying the sails, tally-ho or tag-ho, and just go to the other side, right? So that's kind of a good thing, I think, to know. Hope you enjoyed that. Now that brings us to the trap that I talked about yesterday, and if you guys jump in here with me again, you can see it very clearly now. So you can see, Samantha, Clarice Kramer, I don't know what's going on there by the way, but we have Justin Metro here, Benjamin, Roman Atanasio, Pip Hare, Damien Seguin, and kind of Isabel Yoshki here finally. So yeah, more or less this entire, not the best color here, so kind of this entire group here, you can see that they're kind of moving into the trap, and that fortunately for the leaders, they're kind of true, right? So if we scroll just 12 hours up, you can see, like that it's just closing down right away. A little bit further right away, like right to the worst possible. So this is about 24 hours ahead, so that means that the front group is going to be around here. But if you extrapolate the same distance, that puts this particular front group like sort of right in the middle of it, and these guys here a little bit more in the back, like right in front of it. So yeah, it almost pains me to say it, but it looks like the entire second foiler group. So more or less everybody passed Paul Melat. So I think he's still going to get through, but everybody else, so Samantha Davis, well, Samantha might like just make it through. But I don't know, it's still, yeah, it's pretty tight here already. So no, I think that, yeah, pretty much everybody from Samantha and up will run into a fresh new, so it almost feels like Mother Nature sort of opened the door for the leaders, like, hey, yeah, I'll get my high pressure zone out of the way, just move through with some strong wind, Charlie Dalin, just go set those records, fly boys. And then the entire second foiler group is like, no, you're not getting through here. So yeah, that's it's a little bit unlucky, I guess. And it does also a little bit mean that, well, I mean, nothing is sure, so anything can happen still in the Southern Ocean, but there is some chance that all the way in the end of the race, we will look back and say, this was when the race was decided, right? Because the gap now between, let's say, Samantha and the group with Boris sort of ending around Pip is still pretty close. Like if the front guys have one kind of bad day, 24 hours is enough to close the gap that's there now. So if they accidentally fall out of a system or some high pressure area just happens to get in their way and they get stuck for like a day and a half, everybody will be like right on top of them again and it will be very close. And the chance that something like that will happen for 24 hours along this entire race, pretty high. So far, I would have said, it's still very close racing. Yeah, they're a day behind, but it's a VendeeGlobe. We're like at 23, 24% of the race now. Anything can happen. Now, anything can still happen. But this particular thing is going to put the front runners at maybe a 2-day lead. So even though the guys behind them will be foilers, high tech, very close to the newest boat foilers, it shows very much that this small edge in a long race like this, those small edges of just a few miles average speed higher, that's what all of the development over the last 4 years have been about. Like, we need to increase the average, 4-hour averages, 24-hour averages. If you can just increase those by a few miles every hour, over a race that takes 3 months, that is going to be days and days. And this is where it really shows that the new generation of foils, new generation of hulls, the scow and all that stuff is still going to be like the real test of the Southern Ocean is beginning now. But this is already very promising, and we could see the front group run away with this like very far. If the second group gets a little bit unlucky again with like even more high pressure, they could be days and days and days behind the leader group. But yeah, that's what we're going to. That's what is to be expected in the next 24 hours. That will basically see that second group sail, and they don't really have a choice to get around. It's above them, it's below them. There's no escape. All they can do is just run with the wind they have as far as possible and hope that high leaves them some kind of wiggly path out. But it's not going to be very wide and it's not going to be very fast. And they have to hope that something gets in the way of the leaders and maybe breaks them a little bit. But at least for the next 48 hours, I don't see anything getting in their way. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on in the front. Let's take a quick look at the back. Also interesting, we see Arno Bozeris, one of the potentially faster foilers also, starting to run out a bit and taking a nice strong lead here in the pack. We see Louis Duc. Very cool. Kind of, I would say, leading the foilers. I think technically Jean Le Cam still kind of in charge. Yeah, he's 21 and Louis Duc is second, but it's a bit of a toss-up again. Violet right behind there, also very cool. And let's see how is Sabo doing. Yeah, so he kind of to the doldrums now, so doing a nice 10 knots, so he sped up a little bit. That's nice to see. Zoo getting a little bit stronger also, doing a nice speed, 15 knot average right now. VMG over the last 24 hours, 11 knots, so decent speed. He is definitely caught up a little bit, getting a bit more closer to the pack. And if they run into the slow stuff, I think Zoo might be getting more into the pack again. You can see that the whole second, they're all like, like a harmonica sort of all getting very much compact and close together again as the wind is sort of dying out in front of them. So yeah, there's going to be 2 interesting races. In the front, well 3. In the front pack, very highly competitive, very close racing, so that's very cool. Now in 24 hours we're going to have a very separate second foiler pack, so hard racing there, a lot of modern foilers also. Very interesting race what's going to happen there. And we have a very tight third race. So after having sailed basically from the top of the world to the bottom of the world, I would say that's already a testament to how competitive this particular thing is, with 3 groups all so closely huddled together. So that's very cool, I think.
Okay, well, I guess that was it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and see you in the next adventure.